Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us remotely is Ken Van Leeuwen. He's the founder and managing director of Van Leeuwen and Company. We're going to learn about holistic financial planning, and it's not just about building wealth. Ken, thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to the show. And before we get into,
Jill.
All right, you got it. And let's get right into it here. What is holistic financial planning?
Well, holistic financial planning is where you take the whole person or family into account. And what I mean by that is, you look at taxes, you look at ways to avoid taxes, you look at investments, like how do you invest to meet your goals. We look at, if they're corporate executives like we work with, we look at their benefit packages, stock options, insurance coverages. And then the final area we look at is estate planning, and God forbid, but how do you want your money to pass in the event of your death? So, it's a total package. You take your kids into account, possibly parents, grandparents, things of that nature. So it's all encompassing. It's just not about your investable assets.
Right, and that is so relevant right now when we're thinking about what our income looks like, what benefits are available to us. And that brings me to our first slide here. When we look at reacting to market conditions and timing the markets, you've been doing this long enough to understand picking the top and the bottom is just impossible.
Correct. And of course, when you're trying, because what you have to do, Jill, then is you have to make two right decisions, right? Making one right decision is hard enough. You got to know when to sell, and then you got to know when to rebuy. So we find that decision very difficult. So we prefer not to make it, honestly. We just prefer to ride through all these crazy market swings that we're having, especially these times.
Yeah, and if we take a look at our next slide here, when we think about investing with the ebbs and the flows of the market, I mean, ideally everybody wants to put money in when the market is down, but you have to understand, if you look at it from the financial crisis to where we are right now, the returns have historically been quite good.
Yeah, I mean, really good. You can see from our slide, right? You can see that the S&P since the 08 period, we've an annualized rate of return of a little bit more than 9%. So again, but we've had some really big market swings along the way. People just want to remember 08. And they want to remember, they remember December of 18, but there were some pretty drawdowns in periods like 11 too. 2011, I think, when 2011 is when the S&P downgraded the U.S. debt. So I mean, there's historically been some tremendous moves. That's why you just really try to stay in there, and you try to base your returns and your planning based on a model that's going to fit what your risk tolerances are and what your goals are.
All right, now to wrap up here, I would imagine that setting client expectations for risk and returns is key to everything that you do.
Totally. I mean, I think what's happening is that, we hear a lot about indexing in the S&P 500, which is, a wonderful strategy, but you have to understand what that risk level that you take on is. You can see that based on our earlier slide that, like just in the Vanguard Balanced Index Fund, which is probably a 60-40 stock bond split, you still got 7.27% through those returns. So, maybe you can make your goals go with only 7.27. You don't have to take that risk, because what we're seeing, right, we're seeing that people have to hang in there through all the volatility that we're having. And that's the most important thing. And, when we see some down days, especially a couple of weeks ago, you see those down days when you're down 3,000 points. I mean, you can't help be fearful, the investor. So again, you just have to, mindfully ride through it, stick with your plan, and focus on the goals you eventually want to meet. So that's kind of the key to what we try to do for our clients.
All right, Ken, appreciate all the insight. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you much.
All right, and thanks for joining me on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.